check this out. BCM Raider here, bringing you another Commander deck tech. Today we're looking at Rune of the Hidden Realm, where in the Bant colors, he's a 4/4 Rhino Soldier with Vigilance and Trample. He has an activated ability where we're going to pay 2 colorless, exile another target creature. We're going to return that card back to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So what we're primarily doing is a blink deck. So we're going to have a lot of creatures with enter the battlefield triggers, and we're going to be doing silly, fun things with that, whether it be controlling our opponent's creatures, gaining life, drawing cards, exiling permanents, stuff like that. It's going to be fun. Let's get right into it. First up are all the creatures with the crazy enter the battlefield triggers. So we have Charming Prince. When he enters, we get to scry 2, gain 3 life, or exile another target creature we own, and return it back to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. Now we have Spirited Companion. When it enters, we draw a card. Wood Elves. When it enters, we get to search our library for any forest card and put that on the battlefield. Now we have Eternal Witness. When it enters, we can return any card from our graveyard back to our hand. Now we have Aether Channeler. When it enters, we can create a 1/1 white bird token with flying, return another target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, or draw a card. Now we have Reflector Mage. This one's going to be very good, because when it enters, we're going to return a target creature an opponent controls. Then that creature can't cast spells with the same name as that creature until your next turn. So you can bounce their commander back to their hand, and they can't recast their commander for a whole turn. Now we have Loran of the Third Path. When it enters, we get to destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. It also has a activated ability where you and target opponent each draw a card. Now we have Reclamation Sage. That way, when it enters, we can destroy a artifact or enchantment. Now we have Knight of Autumn. When it enters, we can put 2 +1 counters on Knight of Autumn, destroy target artifact or enchantment, or gain 4 life. Now we have Malanthrope. When it enters the battlefield, we're going to exile target player's entire graveyard. Then we're going to put a +1 counter on Malanthrope for each creature exiled that way. Now we have Aven Interrupter. It has flash, so we can cast it as an instant. And when it enters the battlefield, we're going to exile target spell. That spell will become plotted. It means its owner may cast it as a sorcery without paying its mana cost at a later time. And it also has a static ability where spells your opponents cast from graveyards or exile cost 2 colorless more to cast. Now we have Solemn Simulacrum, or Sad Robot. When it enters, we get to search for a basic land and put it onto the battlefield tapped. And when Solemn Simulacrum is put into a graveyard, we get to draw a card. Now we have Angel of Finality. When it enters the battlefield, we're going to exile all cards from target player's graveyard. Now we have Restoration Angel. When it enters the battlefield, we're going to exile target non-angel creature and then return that creature back to the battlefield. Now we have Venser Shaper Savant. When it enters the battlefield, we're going to return a spell that's on the stack or target permanent back to its owner's hand. So we can bounce our own stuff if we really need to. Now we got a fun one. We have Stonehorn Dignitary. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent skips their next combat phase. So if your opponent is a very highly aggressive deck, we just keep blinking out Stonehorn Dignitary. They never get a combat step. Now we have Acidic Slime. When it enters, we get to destroy a target artifact, enchantment, or land. Now we have good old Swag Tusk. When it enters the battlefield, we're going to gain 5 life. But when it leaves the battlefield, we create a 3/3 green beast token. Now we have Mole Drifter. When it enters, we draw 2 cards. Now we have Cloud Blazer. When it enters the battlefield, we're going to gain 2 life and draw 2 cards. Now we have Sun Titan. Sun Titan, when it enters the battlefield, we're going to return any permanent from our graveyard that's mana cost 3 or less. Luckily, most of our very impactful creatures are mana cost 3 or less. But you can also bring back lands from your graveyard. Now we got a big one. We have Agent of Treachery. When it enters the battlefield, we're going to gain control of target permanent. And then at the beginning of our end step, if we control 3 or more permanents that we don't own, we get to draw 3 cards. So all you really have to do is blink him out 3 times, steal 3 permanents, and every single end step, you get to draw 3 cards. That's pretty crazy. Now we have Angel of the Ruins. When it enters the battlefield, we're going to exile 2 target artifacts or enchantments. Now we have Titan of Industry. When it enters the battlefield, we're going to choose 2. Either destroy target artifact or enchantment, gain 5 life, create a 4/4 Rhino, or put a shield counter on target creature we control. Now we have Avenger of Zendikar. When it enters the battlefield, we create a 0/1 green plant token for each land we control. And then any additional lands that enter the battlefield, we're going to put a +1 counter on each plant creature we control. Now we have Hornet Queen. When it enters the battlefield, we're going to create 4 1/1 green insect creature tokens with flying and death touch. Now we have Terastodon. When it enters the battlefield, we're going to destroy up to 3 target non-creature permanents, and for each of those permanents that was put into a graveyard, its controller will create a 3/3 green elephant. Okay, now we got some creatures that are going to synergize with all these creatures entering the battlefield. So we have Prosperous Innkeeper. When it enters, we're going to create a treasure token. But whenever another creature enters the battlefield under our control, we're going to gain 1 life. We have some creatures that are going to be responsible for continually blinking out the other creatures once they're on the battlefield. So we have Soul Herder. Whenever a creature is exiled from the battlefield, we put a +1 counter on Soul Herder, and then at the beginning of our end step, we can choose to exile another target creature we control, and then return that creature back to the battlefield. Now we have Preston the Vanisher. Whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under our control, if it wasn't cast, as in it was put there from exile, we're going to create a token copy of it, except it'll be an 0/1 white illusion. It has a activated ability where we pay a colorless and a white. If we sacrifice 5 illusions, we get to exile target non-land permanent. Okay, now we have Afara, God of the Polis. This is a indestructible enchantment creature. However, when it's on the battlefield, if our devotion is less than 7 to blue or white, it is not a creature. But at the beginning of every single upkeep, if we had a creature enter the battlefield under our control, last turn, we get to draw a card. Similar to that, we have Thassa Deep Dwelling. Thassa will not be a creature unless our devotion to blue is 5 or more. But at the beginning of our end step, we get to exile another target creature we control, and then return that creature back to the battlefield. We can also pay 3 colorless and a blue to tap down any creature we want. Now we have Emil the Blessed. This is a fun one. For 3 colorless, we get to blink out another creature, and then whenever another creature enters the battlefield, we can pay either a green or a white, and if we do, we're going to put a +1 counter on it. But if that creature happens to be a unicorn, we put 2 counters on it instead. Now we have Genku, Future Shaper. Whenever another non-token permanent leaves the battlefield, we get to choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. Then we create a token that has those characteristics. So it could be a 2/2 white fox with vigilance, a 1/2 blue moonfolk with flying, a 1/1 black rat with lifelink. And then if we pay 5, we can put a +1 counter on each creature we control. We are running 2 planeswalkers in the entire deck. We are playing Venser the Sojourner. It'll enter with 3 loyalty, and then his +2, we get to exile another permanent we own, and then return it back to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. Or -1, creatures are unblockable this turn, and then -8, we get an emblem. Whenever we cast a spell, we get to exile target permanent. Now we have the Eternal Wanderer. It has a static effect where no more than 1 creature can attack the Eternal Wanderer each combat. And then we can +1 her. We're going to exile up to 1 target artifact or creature. Then we're going to return that card back to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Or pay 0, create a 2/2 white samurai with double strike. That's always fun. And then -4, for each player, we get to choose a creature that player controls. Then each player sacrifices all creatures they control not chosen this way. Okay, let's get into artifacts. We have our Soul Ring, our Arcane Signet. Now we have Panharmonicon. If a artifact or creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability, we're going to trigger that ability a second time. Now, to protect ourselves, we have the One Ring. When we cast it, we'll gain protection from everything until our next turn. And then at the beginning of our upkeep, we lose 1 life for each burden counter on the One Ring. The main use is to activate it, put a burden counter on the One Ring, and then draw a card for each burden counter. Now we have Conjurer's Closet. This is going to ensure that our creatures are going to keep blinking out every single turn. Okay, now we have a fun one. We have Sword of Hearth and Home. This is a 3-cost artifact equipment. The equipped creature will get +2/+2 and protection from green and white. But the main part, whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, we're going to exile up to 1 target creature we own, and then search our library for a basic land and put both of those cards back on the battlefield under our control. Okay, let's get into the enchantments. We're playing Aura Shards. Whenever any creature comes into play under our control, we can destroy target artifact or enchantment. Now we have Teleportation Circle. At the beginning of our end step, we get to exile up to 1 target artifact or creature, and then return that creature back to the battlefield. Now we have Wilderness Reclamation. At the beginning of our end step, we're going to untap all lands we control. Okay, let's get into the instance. Most of these are going to be blink effects or ways to protect our board. So we have Ephemerate. We're going to blink out a creature we control. This also has Rebound, so if we cast Ephemerate from our hand, as it resolves, we're going to exile it, and then at the beginning of the next upkeep, we can cast Ephemerate again without paying its mana cost. Now we have Lae'zel's Acrobatics. This is a fun one. We're going to exile all non-token creatures we control, and then roll a d20. Depending on what we roll, determines how many times those creatures are going to blink out. Now we have Ghostway. We're going to remove each creature we control from the game and then return every single one of them back to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. Similar to that, we have Semester's End. I like Semester's End a little bit better than Ghostway because Semester's End will allow us to choose which target creatures we're going to blink out. We can also choose Planeswalkers as well. And when they re-enter, they're going to enter with a additional +1 counter or a loyalty counter. Similar to that, we have Eerie Interlude. This will allow us to choose which target creatures we get to blink out. Now we have Aladmar's Call. We're going to search our library for any creature and put that into our hand. Now we got some removal. We have Swords to Plowshares. We're not running Path to Exile because I don't like giving my opponents the ability to go get land. I'd rather just exile the creature. They can gain life, that's fine. Now we have a couple counter spells. So we have an Offer you can't refuse. Yes, they will get 2 treasure tokens, but you can easily just blow them up. Now we have good old-fashioned counterspell. Now we have Arcane Denial. Now we have a couple cards that are going to help protect us. So we have Flawless Maneuver. If we control our commander, we can cast this without paying its mana cost, but creatures are going to gain indestructible until the end of turn. Similar to that, we have Heroic Intervention, but Heroic Intervention's a little bit better because it's all permanents. We'll gain hexproof and indestructible until the end of turn. Okay, let's get into the sorceries. We have Farseek. That way we can go get whatever plains, island, swamp, or mountain card we want and put it on the battlefield tapped. Now we have Nature's Lore to go get any forest card. Now we have Green Sun Zenith. That way we can go get whatever green creature and put it onto the battlefield, and then Green Sun Zenith will shuffle back in. Now we have Wargate. This will allow us to go get any permanent and put it on the battlefield. Now we have a couple board wipes. We have Supreme Verdict. I like Supreme Verdict because it can't be countered. And we have Time Wipe. Time Wipe is fun because it'll protect one of your creatures while destroying all the other ones. Okay, let's get into the land base. We have our Command Tower, our Misty Rainforest, our Windswept Heath, our Flooded Strand as our fetch lands. Now we need the lands to go get. So we have Spara's Headquarters as our Triumph, our Shocklands with Hallowed Fountain, Temple Garden, and Breeding Pool. Now we have our Surveil lands with Lush Portico, Meticulous Archive, and Hedge Maze. Now we have our Battle Bond lands. So we have Bountiful Promenade, Rejuvenating Springs, and Sea of Clouds. Now we have our Exotic Orchard. That way we can produce at least more than one color. Now we have our Hinterland Harbor, our Sun Petal Grove, and our Glacial Fortress as our check lands. Now we have our Scry lands. We have Temple of Enlightenment, Temple of Mystery, and Temple of Plenty. Of course, we have Dryad Arbor. Now we have Alchemist Refuge. For a green and a blue, we can cast non-land cards as though they had flash. And that's going to be really important because majority of this deck is a more reactive deck. That way we can respond to what our opponents are doing. And because we're going to be drawing lots of cards, we have Reliquary Tower, and we want to keep those cards in our hand. We're running 4 forests, 4 plains, and 4 islands. And that was the Commander deck for Rune of the Hidden Realm. I really hope you guys enjoyed this Bant Blink deck. This deck is really fun to play, and if you guys have any suggestions on how to improve this deck, let me know in the comments below. I'll provide the link for the deck list on Boxfield. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, follow me on TikTok, share these videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.